So technology empowers people to see the world beyond their immediate horizons and to achieve way more than what they can currently see within their current horizons as well. Hi, yes, so I'm Chris Locke. I'm the founder of Caribou Digital, which is a company I founded looking at how ICT works in emerging markets and how we're building digital economies. But I've spent the last 20 years in mobile and internet and the last 6 years running the GSMA's Mobile for Development Group. Yeah, so we're really interested that as mobile technology and digital technology becomes more prevalent in emerging markets, primarily sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, we're really on the cusp of viable digital economies where you can deliver services using digital technology, people can make payments using digital technology, but also there's a real chance to run health institutions, education institutions, and ultimately create businesses and entrepreneurs using this technology. So that's the work we do. I started it at the beginning of this year after choosing to leave the GSMA, really to look beyond mobile. Mobile is an important part, but also look at satellite and a lot of other new technologies that are coming into this space. From a hardware perspective, what's really interesting is we're starting to see companies like Brick and other organizations building hardware, whether it's mobile phones or access devices in Africa now. And I think that's hugely exciting because what we're seeing and what we say with the work we do on digital economies is this is not the Silicon Valley mapping itself onto emerging markets. You know, Silicon Valley has grown very big businesses very fast, using primarily advertising as a way of paying for it. That model doesn't work in emerging markets. So we're seeing a lot of social entrepreneurship. We're seeing transaction-based businesses that use mobile money. And it's a very different shape of the way that services are building. But far more importantly, what's really exciting is we're seeing new ways of delivering healthcare, new ways of delivering education, new ways of connecting people to information, but also energy and water that uses this technology in a completely new, original, 21st century way that is fit for these markets rather than something that's mapped on from Western markets. Yeah, so a great example with energy. There's a company called Mcopa, and there are increasingly other companies using a similar model that are looking at how no one really has access to electricity, and not having access to electricity has phenomenal impacts. I mean, kids can't study, you can't connect yourselves to any other form of the technology. People have mobile phones, but on average, people living in off-grid areas will spend 1/3 of what they spend on airtime on getting access to electricity. So people who are off-grid pay a premium for energy, they pay a premium for light. So what companies like Mcopa have done have given them solar units for the house. So basically a small box about this big, and it has 4 LED lights off it and a solar panel about the same size, and some cables to charge various types of phones. And what they looked at was saying, well, actually people are paying for energy, but they're paying too much and they're not getting anything back for it. So people would spend 50 to 80 Kenyan shillings a day on access to kerosene, which is polluting, brings health problems, and is expensive and dangerous. So they priced their product by putting a simple phone SIM unit into this device and giving it a mobile money account. You can walk into a shop, pay a few dollars, and walk out with this energy system for your home. And you pay for it on a pay-as-you-go way. So you put a small amount of money, less than you would spend on kerosene. So you're actually spending less money per day on energy than you were before. But you're getting green energy access, you're getting LED lighting to the home. It completely changes what you can do. Over a period of 12 months of usage, the model is structured so that you're also paying for the unit. So usually after about 12 months, someone then has free solar energy and free electricity for their house. And you know, this use of mobile and technology, solar technology, digital technology, to try and come up with new ways of making energies work is wonderfully 21st century solutions to the major problems we see in Africa. So yeah, so ICT tends to be a bit of an unfriendly term. It sounds difficult and expensive, and it sounds like it's something that you use a lot of energy and effort into trying to build, and then it becomes redundant. Really what we're talking about when we're looking at technology in development is not so much the bits and bobs, the handsets, the devices, the platforms, but really critically understanding the role that technology plays in people's lives and in societies and communities. So fundamentally, as it has been for everyone that's ever bought a mobile phone or used the internet around the world, what technology does is connects people. What it allows people to do is to talk to each other and to talk to other people around the world. Secondly, it gives them access to information. We have in the last 20 years created the most amazing free access body of knowledge that anyone in human civilization has ever created. So it connects people to that. It connects them to Wikipedia. It connects them to the full breadth of content on the internet. And then using mobile money, which is the other major innovation that's uniquely happening primarily in sub-Saharan Africa, is it allows people to make transactions. So banking and formal financial access is punitively expensive for people. There are no banks. There's very little access to that infrastructure. Mobile money and digital payments has allowed people to make transactions, which has then allowed situations such as where they can pay for energy and water access, but has also formalized economies, allowed people to save, allowed people to buy insurance programs, allowed people to get credit ratings and loans to start businesses that were previously denied to them. So there's this continuum that technology offers where it connects, offers access to information, and then offers access to transactions. It's fundamentally changing the way that people are working in these markets. So one of the things we're really seeing technology do is actually connect innovators to a global audience. And one of the earliest and best examples of this was Ushahidi, which was a program, a piece of software developed in 2007 in response to the Kenyan political violence that allowed people to send a text to a website to report where violence is happening. That's now become a major organization called CrisisNet, who have developed their tools for free online as a combination of entrepreneurs from Kenya, from other parts of Africa, but also critically from around the world, who've built out a suite of tools that anyone can use to visualize what's happening in the world in situations of crisis. So as a non-profit example, that's a great example of where we're seeing the world's coders start sometimes in these markets, and then those ideas take hold elsewhere. We're increasingly seeing this happen in a for-profit space as well, as digital entrepreneurship in Kenya and in many of the markets in East Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa becomes a reality, to the point where actually there is increasing levels of venture capital investment in these markets and a lot of funds from developed markets looking at how this is working. In particular, a company called Rocket Internet has a partnership with two mobile operators, MTN and Millicom Tigo, where they are funding very specific organizations building anything from classified ad systems to job markets, etc., realizing that there needs to be the eBay of Africa, there needs to be systems like that. But also consumers are being very innovative in the way that they're putting these things together. So one of the things we've seen reported is where Instagram has taken off on the back of Facebook in some East African markets, where mobile money is also prevalent. People currently don't use eBay a lot if they don't have a credit card, because you need a credit card to use PayPal, etc., although PayPal is overcoming that in sub-Saharan markets quite a lot. But we saw people using Instagram effectively as eBay. They would put up Instagram photos of things they wanted to sell, and then someone would message them on Instagram and then do the transaction using mobile money. So people were taking the tools that's available to them, taking the tools that make those functionalities available to them, and creating their own versions of these softwares. And it's that innovation, that creativity with these tools that I think is one of the amazing things with technology. Ultimately, technology massively reduces the barriers for people to be innovative, to be creative, and then to reach a global audience. So I think mobile is still going to be the dominant way that people access communication services and internet, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. I think just the increases in mobile networks capacity as they start looking at 4G, LTE networks, etc., just hugely increase. But also what mobile operators have done in the last 10 years, and done fantastically in the last 10 years in many emerging markets, is built entire infrastructures for businesses to sit on the back of. So actually, one of the major assets that mobile operators have that really allowed them to scale mobile money so quickly was not just the technology, but the human infrastructure. So mobile operators will often have anywhere from 20 to 50,000 airtime agents, those people who sell on every single corner of the street, selling airtime. And indeed, anywhere you go in Africa, every third shop is painted the colour of a mobile operator as they're selling airtime. And that physical distribution and marketing and payment infrastructure is what allowed them to take mobile money to scale, and what will allow other businesses to then sit on the back of those partnerships and that infrastructure to take it out to rural populations. So it's a technology infrastructure, it's a communications infrastructure, but it's also a human infrastructure. And I think that'll make mobile still fundamentally important. We will bring access to those areas that mobile can't reach using other hybrid technologies, but I still think the combination of assets that mobile operators have make them vitally important to the success of what it is that we're trying to do in using technology for development. So one of the great things that technology does is gives people a voice and a vision of what the world is outside of their immediate community when that can be restrictive. So we've seen the positive side of this. We've seen with a lot of HIV and AIDS programs where people would be stigmatized if they went into a clinic because it would be announcing to their local community the problem they had, could then more privately use a mobile phone to receive that information and participate in that program in a way that doesn't stigmatize them so physically to their community. Equally, technology allows people to connect to like minds that might not exist within their immediate community as well. So one of the things we've seen SMS used for a lot, particularly actually in South America, is with AIDS and HIV encounter groups, getting people to talk to other people in the same situation that don't live where they are. Now those people otherwise would be alone and would not have the benefit of that network of support and that network of faith and community that they have through that. So I think there's a phenomenal kind of power to allow people to see outside of that community. It also can, in a positive way, reduce some of those power structures. So we have seen mobile money formalize economies and take some of the power away from the negative forces that would want to control access to finance and access to financial transactions in those regions. People are still human, and in many cases we have seen people reassert that right by force. But I think it moves things in the right direction. Most particularly, I think this is really powerful when we look at the gender role of technology. I think mobile money and mobile technology allows you to put finance, access to information and access to management tools into the hands of women in the family, and the great development truism that if you focus on the mother in the family, it actually benefits the whole family is absolutely true. And I think what mobile allows you to do is to put a lot of that power into the hands of women. We had a big program at the GSMA called M-Women, which was just very specifically approaching that, seeing how mobile operators built offerings and suites of tools to support women. Everything from tools to allow them to call out and report violence and abuse, to mobile money products specifically targeting women. And there were some great stories of how that was enabling women to feel powerful and to feel independent in their communities. A quote I gave earlier on today, I think, is the most powerful one. When we did some face-to-face research with women who were using mobile money, one of the women said that she liked mobile money because whereas her husband used to beat her up to get her money, now he smashes the phone, but she just gets another SIM card and the money's still there. So it's that ability to be in control of her finances is an amazingly empowering thing for women in those markets. So you can use it to try and give power to the powerless in those communities. So there's some that are a bit simpler to solve, although still hard. Pricing is, for data access, is still expensive. And I think there needs to be more innovation and more players in the markets to reduce that. But that will happen. It's the nature of markets that happens. The harder ones to overcome, and I think where organizations like yourselves and people on the ground, such as those viewing this video, but also the broader development community can play a real role, is in digital and technology literacy. And I'll divide that into two ways. There is literacy in and of itself. The main variety of information on the web is textual. This is difficult for obviously non-literate populations, but I think there are things that really help us in those situations. Firstly, the very broad range of devices people are using tend to be touch, tend to be gestural. So you can use icons and other things other than text interfaces to allow people to access information. You can use video and audio and other things. And speech recognition is getting phenomenally good. So I think there are ways of building interfaces that don't rely so much on text. But there's also the broader question of the chicken and egg situation of, do you need to put people onto general literacy programs before you bring in tech? Or, and this is something that is a bit of a hypothesis, but I believe will prove to be true, is giving people access to literate content on the internet for the first time that has real value to them. Probably one of the things that will drive more self-taught literacy than anything we've seen. We see a huge amount of anecdotes in programs around the world, whether it's SMS or full internet access, where when people can see the utility of access to the internet and utility of technology to bring information to people, it gives them the reason to learn to read, or it gives them the reason to learn to write. So I don't think we need to wait until people are literate to introduce them to technology. I think we can do them simultaneously, and hopefully technology drives a lot of literacy in that sense. But I think there needs to be a lot of programs from development organisations to get people literate in how they use technology, and then also really make them literate in what they can bring to technology and what they can contribute as well. Yeah, I think the purpose of this conference and the organisational group behind it is around communications. I think you as an organisation, and Neely and all of you who have organised this conference have been fantastic in prioritising the role that technology plays in the modern world for communications. And I think fundamentally what you can do is understand how this does create a change in the power relationship between development organisations and users. We've tended to really be more of a supply rather than demand driven group of organisations. We tend to think, probably rightly, that we know what people need. They need information on this disease, they need information on this, or they need that level of education and resource or not. And then we tend to supply it to people. We kind of pay for the channels, whether it's television, radio, physical media or whatever, and we push those communications out. That flips when we bring communications technology like mobile in that people become active and people stop being passive recipients and start being active participants in that. One of the things I do with a lot of the charities and organisations I talk to is say to them, how many search engine optimization people do you have in your organisation? How many SEO people? And they say, well, we have a great team of SEO. And I say, well, what are they doing? And they tend to be facing Western internet users driving donations and making sure that their organisation is up the Google ranks for Western audiences. And I'm saying, well, you do realise the vast majority of people you help on the ground are probably going to come online in the next 2 to 5 years. And they're probably going to have some form of Google as their primary interface. And you're going to need to be discoverable. Your services are going to need to be found in that space. So I think understanding how you enable people's voices to come through and how you support that, but then also understanding how that shifts the power balance a little bit in your relationship with the people that you work in, how you listen as well as you possibly can to what they're saying and what their needs are, and then respond as well as actually communicate to them. So it's that need to be able to listen as well as communicate that really becomes paramount as these technologies become popular. So increasingly technology in emerging markets is the only infrastructure that's there. It's the only infrastructure that can provide financial services to people. Many countries now have double-digit percentages of their GDP going over mobile money. It's the only infrastructure that can provide widespread health information to people at a major scale. It's the only infrastructure that can provide widespread access to educational resources. It's the only infrastructure that can provide widespread access to viable energy and water infrastructure and help transact around that. This is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's increasingly the backbone for the way most services are delivered in emerging markets, exactly as it is increasingly in Western markets as well. The vast majority of people watching this DVD who live or work in the US will have cars that in the next 2 or 3 years will have an internet connection. This is not something that is a luxury anymore. It's the infrastructural backbone of society. And actually, by considering it a luxury, and assuming that it's there for frivolous reasons rather than essential reasons, you're not allowing people to participate in what is probably the main industry in the 21st century. The digital industry will be to the 21st century what oil industry was to the 20th century in terms of, you will need to have access to digital networks to transact, to be politically active, to be economically active, and you wouldn't deny people access to oil. Tomorrow is hard to predict. And I mean, I always say to people, one of the reasons why I love this industry and why I've been in it for so long is I can't realistically say X is going to be happening in 5 years' time. I can give some good guesses. But the wonderful thing about it is you don't know. You genuinely don't know what's going to take off and what's going to be popular for people. What makes it such a fantastically interesting space to be in. We will see most emerging markets, especially Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, lead the world in the use of mobile money and digital payments. We are replacing old cash and credit card based systems in the Western world with new NFC and other technologies. In emerging markets, they're going straight to the next generation. This whole leapfrogging that originally took place when mobile took hold without having wireline infrastructure for telecoms is happening in every single sector. So say an energy sector moving straight to microgrid production rather than having big power stations. So I think the really fascinating thing in 5 years' time will be when the infrastructure and the sophistication of the way that people use technology in emerging markets, in markets we would consider to be very poverty-stricken, is actually more advanced in many ways than the way we are in the way that we work. And that we learn as much from understanding how much innovators, entrepreneurs and developers in those markets bring things to bear than we are the educators of those people. And that I can see happening easily within 5 years' time. And I'm actually massively looking forward to it happening as well. So usually what keeps me up at night is jet lag. We haven't yet got the technology of matter transportation working yet. So we fly a lot, which is ironic. But no, what keeps me up at night about technology and what gets me excited about technology is using a business term. My background has largely been in the industry rather than in the non-profit side. Moving people up the value chain. So there's been a lot of talk about tech entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in general as a fantastic way of bringing economic improvement to these markets. And I think it's good, but I think we use the term entrepreneur too widely. We see anyone that's not in some formal organization as an entrepreneur. Actually, when you talk to lots of people we consider to be entrepreneurs, most of them would like really boring jobs with salaries and health benefits and stuff like that. However, where I think entrepreneurship is really valuable and where I see technology enabling this is suddenly you can build and own a business at a national, regional or global scale. So I think when we see the Mark Zuckerberg of Africa, I will be over the moon, because this will not just be someone who has, we write these lovely case studies and we tell ourselves the stories of the people we have helped, whether it's through education or any other means, and how they've managed to get a job and do this and do that. When we see the first genuine kind of tech millionaires and billionaires come out that are hopefully building businesses that are creating job and employment and creating value in those markets, and they own it. They fundamentally own it. They're not working for Microsoft, they're not working for Google. May get bought by them, but they're not initially working for them. Then that's a game changer for me, and I think that's significant because that gives the value of ownership. And I think that's the huge thing that technology, from a business perspective, gives people, is the ability to own and scale their own businesses rather than just work for someone else. And that excites me, and I can't wait for the first few entrepreneurs to come through and really show what the possibilities are, because I think they will be beacons for millions of people in the regions to then follow on. For me, true entrepreneurship isn't just you've created a job for someone, you've moved them up the value chain. You've put them in a more powerful position in that industry than they would be if they were working with someone else. And that's the power of entrepreneurship for me. So here is a real world example of what this means for people and what it can do and how it can change the world they're in. A mobile operator in India ran a program teaching women ICT as a way of earning money by teaching other people ICT. And a woman from one of the villages took the program and started a small business teaching other people ICT. She did very well at that, to the point where the local government organisations contracted her business to teach their staff ICT. That gave her exposure to local politics, which she realised was incredibly badly run. So she then stood for election and got nominated. So this simple act of wanting to use technology and understanding ICT and how it can help your family, how it can bring information to them, how it can earn you a living to help your family, took this woman on a journey that just got bigger and bigger and bigger as each time her skills and her own energy and enthusiasm enabled her to see a bigger and bigger picture and horizon of what she was achievable, until it got to the point where actually there was nothing she felt couldn't be done or that she couldn't do to kind of drive that forward. So I think that's that wonderful little encapsulating story from a real world example of what that kind of technological literacy and capability can offer people. So I think you've got to not see technology as scary, and you've got to understand that you are already using technology to do everything you do on a daily basis. So as I said at the end of my keynote earlier on this morning, technology becomes powerful when it's connected to people with ideas and experience, right? Nothing beats on-the-ground experience that everyone watching this will have, the way their markets and communities work, the way communication works in those markets, and what's needed. What's powerful is them understanding how technology can increase the impact of what they do, reduce the cost in many ways, and really empower them to do more. And I think approaching technology in that way, not as a scary technology that needs to be learned, but more as something that they can harness to improve what they're already doing is really, really powerful. A good friend of mine, Danny O'Brien, who's worked for a lot of organizations campaigning for openness and justice on the internet for a long time, probably sums it up the best, and I'll kind of quote his quote shamelessly. But he said, you know, he came here, and here being technology in the digital industry, to make the person below him as powerful as the person above him. And I think that's an incredibly powerful statement, because that is what technology enables you to do. How can you, in what you're doing right now, empower the people you are working with to be able to do what the people above and beyond you can do now? And how can you use technology to make that happen? And I think that's the kind of vision people should have.